Every once in a while, if you're lucky as a teacher, you come across a student who actually kicks your ass, who challenges you to think outside of the safe little box that you set up for yourself. And I know for me, that little box is my studio, that desk, that chair where I am the final arbiter on what's good and what's not good, what's right, what's wrong. And sometimes you gotta step back and say, you know what? Sometimes I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And it can be very humbling. And for me, that student was Jess Tom, the self-described non-binary trans queer Asian American stand-up comedian who just back in June had a feature article in the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. They're with me today and we get real personal, so put the phone back in your pocket. Creating Behavior starts now. Well, hello, my fellow daydreamers. I wanted to start off today talking about the featured article in the September 6th New York Times magazine. The title is called America at Hunger's Edge. And what it is a photo essay, primarily. These are photographs taken by a photographer named Brenda Ann Keneally, who spent 3 months during this pandemic traveling from New York all the way to California. She went across the Midwest through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, down through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all the way to California, chronicling the food insecurity. And that's what the experts call lack of food. The food insecurity in this country. I did not know this. 1 in 8 people in this country don't have enough food to eat. And I think it's important to talk about. I think it's important, certainly, for you as artists to become aware empathically. And why I am talking about this is because the photographs are so powerful. They're so disturbing. They will not only spark your empathy and your sensitivity, but what I love about photography is it really allows you to kind of immerse yourself into the shoes of the subjects that you're looking at. And these photos are just, they're heartbreaking. I'm looking at one photo now of this kid. He's on top of the kitchen counter. And he's putting some food into this food processor, and you look at the apartment. You can certainly tell that it's run down. And I look at all of the food that is in the house, and all of these photos, you see this. It's unhealthy food. It's cheap food. It's the only thing that people who are starving can afford. And I've never had to worry about food my entire life. I shop at fucking Whole Foods. And I eat organic. I can eat healthy. And most Americans cannot do that. I'm going to read to you the caption that is accompanying this photograph that I just mentioned. A week after New York's governor announced that schools would remain closed for the rest of the academic year, Lucas Manasseri, 12, was making apple bread using the chopped up fruit from a week's worth of school lunches. Every weekday throughout March, April, and May, Lucas's father, John Manasseri, visited Lucas's school to pick up the free lunches being made available to low-income families. When everything first started, they weren't giving you the extra food stamps, says Manasseri, 39, who earns minimum wage working at a grocery store. Since then, an improvement in benefits has increased the grocery budget for the 4-member household to $400 a month from $300. I've got a little more wiggle room, Manasseri says. If the kids want extra bananas or apples in the house, I can grab them. Well, that's just one family's struggle to survive, to put food on the table. Please check it out and take it in. You can go to newyorktimes.com/food-insecurity to take a look at the article. So, grew up in Cincinnati, very sheltered. I think my generation and generations before me have grown up in a very binary world. He, she, that's it. There's really no reason to think or to contemplate that there are other aspects to our collective humanity. And as a teacher, as an artist, over the last, 5-6 years, I have been challenged to break out of that box. And, teaching trans and non-binary students has accelerated my need to come correct on my pronoun usage. And, it has made me just so much more aware of how limited I am on so many things. And, Jess was one of those students who really kind of threw cold water in my face and said, listen, you need to think a little bit more deeply, and you need to consider more insightfully, not just how you deal with trans and non-binary students, but how you deal with minorities, with people of color. And I want to thank them for doing that. And, this conversation, it gets personal, it gets uncomfortable for me, but it was important, and I'm really glad to share it with you. And thank you, Jess, for teaching me a few things. So here we go. This is Jess Tom. What would you like to talk about?
I am really interested, actually, in talking about my training and my time at Maggie and coming back. And I've been really interested in reconnecting with you about this. Now that I'm older and I have more distance from everything, and I feel like I am just more grown up to sort of revisit some of my time at Maggie with you. Because I feel like we'll see what you think about this, but I feel like I kind of put you through the ringer as a student a little.
What do you mean by put through the ringer? I don't know if I would qualify it that way, but you challenged me.
I do think I asked a lot of you. I don't think I asked too much. I think that I asked just enough.
I don't think you asked too much at all. Like I say, you challenged me to just think a little bit more, to consider a little bit more what I might be asking you to do. And I think about, in particular, that Spoon River work.
Yes.
Right?
I think about the Spoon River all the time.
I do too. And I think about teaching you through that and trying to consider and ponder if I would do it differently or if I did it right. So you were working on the Spoon River. It's a collection of poems by Edgar Lee Masters. You were doing Walter Simmons.
I was. Right? Walter Simmons, who's a child prodigy who doesn't amount to anything.
Yeah. And at the end, he realized he doesn't have the brains.
Mm-hmm.
And you were working on it. And then we started to get into character. And
yes.
I said, well, I think you should find a Chinese accent.
Mm-hmm. It was specifically to your credit, and I want to specify this to your credit. It wasn't just Chinese accent. It was, the full character was 1900s Chinese immigrant, San Francisco.
That's right. And you got upset with me, and you were, I think you were offended.
At first I said no. I won't do it. And then maybe it was by the end of class, I thought about it, or maybe the next class. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But at first I flat out said no.
And why did you say no?
In that moment, I think that I said no because, well, it's very fraught to ask an Asian actor to do any quote unquote Asian accent, at least somebody who, doesn't speak with one naturally. And it's fraught because people get asked to do that all the time in the industry. And it's because there's this perpetual foreigner idea about us, that the industry can only see us as foreign and as different. And that like Asian American people like don't really exist. It's not really a thing. And so,
Well, you're typecast, right? You're the geeks, you're the tech nerds, you're the prostitutes, you're the massage therapists,
right.
you know.
Or at least that's how it has been for a long time.
And I remember saying to you that I wanted you to really try to do justice to someone that would have arrived in this country at that time
Right.
and to try to do justice to their humanity. And to your credit, you came back and you did it. And you actually, it was really lovely. It was one of the more interesting Spoon River interpretations that I've ever had from a student.
Thank you. It did. I mean, it's hard because I do think it was original, and I do think that that was a moment that was only made possible kind of because you had me, like specifically, because there are a few layers going on there, right? Like it was that I learned a dialect. It was that I like figured out the wardrobe and everything, and I really wanted, and I really struggled with this because I spent a lot of money on that. I spent maybe $150 on like just that Spoon River. I have to hold myself to a high standard because if I fail, and this of course is true of the actual literal acting itself, I was like, if I fail, this is racist. And that was what was so hard for me about it.
Or stereotypical.
Right, because the precedent that has been set by the industry is people doing bad or racist or unresearched accents. Like you were talking about Margaret Cho's All American Girl. One of the things about All American Girl was that they hired, of course, a bunch of Asian actors to play her family. And then they had them all do this sort of generic, like Asian-y accent. They're not doing a Korean accent. Margaret Cho is Korean. It's one thing when Margaret Cho is doing the character of her mother and she's doing a Korean accent to emulate her mother because it's true to her experience and true to her life. It's totally different to get a bunch of Asian actors of a lot of Asian ethnicities and be like, just do some kind of accent. That is the precedent. And I was like, I don't ever want to do that. So that means it has to be so well researched and so well done.
So where did you go for the accent?
You gave me two options that day, actually. One was 1900s Chinese immigrant San Francisco, and the other one was authoritarian North Korea. And I was going to be executed. And it was my last speech before I was going to be executed. The one that I picked because I am Chinese American from San Francisco. And I was like, okay, there's something I can draw from that. Whereas I feel like if I had picked the North Korea one, I was like, I'm going to pull totally out of my ass. I think that someone could be taught to do that. I think I could potentially be taught to do that and do a good-ish job. But I didn't think that I, on my own, doing my own work, was going to do that justice. I just don't think I'm prepared to do it on my own. I went to a Cantonese accent for that because I know, again, because I consider it part of my history. It was mostly Cantonese-speaking Chinese people who were in San Francisco at that time. And this sort of spoke to, you and I had a big confrontation.
Yeah, in class.
In class. It lasted like 20 minutes. I had like snot coming down my face confrontation as I was working on this. And something that I was trying to communicate to you at the time, which I'm not sure I came through, was just that it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It was that the amount of work that I had to do was much greater than the amount of work that a lot of the white students, I should say specifically, were going to have to do. Because to me, I was like, if you give somebody RP, German accent, French accent, whatever, they can go to the language coach and somebody can help them with that. Like there are resources to help them. For me, I was like, there are no resources like this, really. Like there was a language coach who could help me with something, you know what I mean? But I was like, but what help really is like a white person going to give me to learn a Cantonese accent?
Did you feel I was being unfair?
I didn't feel it was unfair. I felt that you didn't understand the scope of the work you were asking me to do.
That's probably true. I didn't even probably consider that. I know I didn't. I just thought, well, this is the work, so go do it. Without understanding, well, fuck, man, this is a Cantonese accent you're asking me to do, and like, where the fuck am I supposed to go do that?
Right. And so much of it was drawn from just my own personal knowledge and me reaching out to my own resources. Like I did not have a language coach or anything for that. I reached out to multiple friends who were native Cantonese speakers, being like, I need your help. And it was hard. It was hard to even ask for that because it's fraught to ask people, specifically like Chinese people in America. The idea of a quote unquote Chinese accent is very fraught. People work really hard to unlearn that shit, right? Because they want to assimilate. They want to be seen as legitimate in American society, American culture. And in the white supremacist American culture, that means you try to not have an accent. It doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. So it's like hard. People thought I was asking them to do something racist. It felt racist to like even emulate an accent at all, which was what I was really pushing back against when at first I told you I didn't want to do it.
I think you even said that to me. I think you said you're being racist.
Mm.
And this is racist, and I don't want to do it.
I would say that now, as somebody with a little more perspective, I think that I am glad that I undertook that project and I am proud of what I did with it. What I think is racist about it is that, and I just want you to know, like, when I am using the term racist, I mean that, like, in the sense that, like, I think everything is racist. And I don't mean it in a way that, like, indicts you personally. I mean, like, all of it.
I have been indicting myself for weeks now as I have really come to accept my own white progressive liberal racist mentality. This is a whole other subject we could get into, but
I am proud of that work. What the thing that I think was racist about the whole thing was it wasn't just that you had assigned this character, this Chinese immigrant character to me. It was that in the class there was me and Xian, who was also Asian American, and the character that you had given her was Geisha. And so it wasn't just me, it was all of it together, you know? And it was the idea that you had looked at us and had cast us this way in this, again, perpetually foreign sort of way.
That's a very valid. I didn't even, I forgot about asking Xian to do that. You know what I think it is I don't have very often, a broad swath of Asian American actors. And so
Right.
all of a sudden my imagination starts to go, and it goes to, I don't want to say they're cliches, but I just think, oh, this would be really interesting to delve into.
Well, there are things that you as a teacher feel like you don't have the possibility. Like you couldn't do that if you had an all white class. You couldn't assign geisha. You couldn't assign Chinese immigrant. You couldn't assign South and North Korea. But for us, it's basically a white person looking at us and being like, that's a foreigner, you know?
Right.
And like for me with the particular, like I think that we're all very lucky that you almost by accident assigned me something that I actually personally connected to. And I do think that that's why I did a good job. But you didn't know you were doing that. You did that by accident.
Yeah, I just gave you two options.
Right. And one of them happened to really deeply resonate with me. Whereas you could have given me some other Asian options that don't resonate with me at all. And like I do think that like I remember Xian struggling with that one because I don't think that it had anything to do with her, you know?
It didn't. It was just, oh, this might be interesting. Why don't you explore it? And not realizing that that's racist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's and certainly coming from a white guy. Like I look back now and I think, yeah, that probably just was my own ignorance. I have begun to just kind of just see how stupid I really am about so many things in the last probably 5 months than I have in most of my adult life. And it's been eye-opening, in particular when it comes to pronoun usage and being able to talk to someone the way they want to be talked to. Mm. I have a non-binary student right now in my class.
I was literally going to ask you, have you had other trans and non-binary students since me?
Yes, and I have one right now in my summer session, and I'll throw in a he every once in a while. I'm like, fuck, god damn it, and it's embarrassing, and it's like to just go through my whole life thinking that there's just two options. Mm-hmm. And then in the last, year or two, really for me, it's been a lot longer for everybody else. I haven't really ever had to consider it. I've never really had to challenge myself to think in a different way. And I consider myself progressive and liberal and open-minded. And
Totally. Well, that's the trap, isn't it?
that's what's upsetting.
Hmm. Well,
Same when it comes to uh, Black Lives Matter and my own just indoctrinated racism.
I'm gonna, while we're still on Walter Simmons, I'm gonna bust your balls about one more thing.
Please.
But then I do want to talk about the gender stuff. Was that you actually told me when we were having our big confrontation, you told me very directly that, quote unquote, if I wanted to work in this country, I was going to have to learn how to do this accent.
I remember saying that to you. I remember I said, listen, you're going to, they're going to ask this of you at some point. And wouldn't you like to have this under your belt? That's how I rationalize it. Wouldn't you just like to work on it now? So
Totally.
you have it.
I totally understand that you were trying to do a tough love actor thing. And I do think that in a certain era and for some other people that is true. But it was wrong. It was wrong to say to me, you shouldn't have said that to me as a student. And fortunately, I knew at the time that was wrong. And just not to internalize it, because I was like, I just don't think that's true. And also, to be really real with you, in my 5 years of auditioning since I graduated the program, that has never been true for me. It's specifically, particularly not true for me because I don't read that way. I just don't read that way to people. I mean, I'm a fifth generation American. I think that also being queer and being gender nonconforming makes people read me as a modern American, which that is its own complicated set of things. But yeah, but it's not true for a lot of us at all anymore. And even if it were true, it shouldn't be true. And the onus should be more on the industry to change that than it should be on us to be like, well, I guess I better fit this racist stereotype better.
I'm sorry that I said that to you.
I forgive you. But really what you're trying to do, right, is get us to fit better into
white world. Right.
White world. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what's embarrassing is that this doesn't reveal itself to me until I hit 50.
I'm not going to blow too much smoke up your ass because that's not my style. But unfortunately, that's actually very good. Unfortunately, that's actually doing very well for somebody of your demographic, is to be 50 and to be like, maybe I should think about this. That's actually very, very good and much better than I would say a lot of people expect.
It's got to start with people like me changing.
It does. It does. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you know that, because it does. The rest of us, we don't have the power to do anything. So you have to do it.
Right. It's on people like me. See, Shamuka came on a few weeks ago.
Yes, I started listening. I didn't listen to the whole episode, but I was listening to it before this. And I was actually like, oh, cool. Charlie's having another conversation with a queer Asian American. That's nice.
Yeah, check that off my list. But we were talking about the whole idea of whitewashing, and I started thinking back to all the films that I kind of grew up watching. I just remember Mickey Rooney and Breakfast.
Oh, totally.
It's one of the most horrific, awful, disgusting whitewashing roles ever. And that's just one of many. And I mentioned this in the podcast with her. I saw this T-shirt that had Scarlett, Matt, Tilda, and Emma on it, and I'm thinking to myself, oh,
actresses.
Yeah, she likes those actors. And then you realize, oh no, this is it. These are the so-called open-minded artists that take these roles that they have no business taking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you did that PSA, that Ghost in the Shell PSA.
I did do that. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that was very fun. I mean, I think that it's complicated, particularly with Asian and East Asian characters, which we're talking about right now. There are a few different layers of things that happen. Like Mickey Rooney, I don't consider that to be quote unquote whitewashing. I consider that more just yellowface, just straight up yellowface.
True.
Whitewashing, I would consider to be more like when a character was originally conceived of as Asian and then gets played by a white person. And then there's also something that I feel like is very insidious about the industry right now is that because it's very in vogue, because it's very stylish to have like diverse casts, that now I find that people are casting quote unquote diverse or marginalized actors, but everybody who wrote the show is white, or everybody who directed, produces it is white. So it's not actually an accurate or like a truthful or meaningful representation of people of color or et cetera, because
the studios are white, the networks are white, the boardrooms are white, the writing rooms are white.
mm-hmm. And it comes through. I just got my first TV credit ever.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's Love Life with Anna Kendrick on HBO Max, and I have a really, really small part in it, but it was my first ever. It was very fun, and I do think it's interesting. So the episode is a lesbian bachelorette party, and I play one of the guests. They cast a lot of my friends, actually, a lot of stand-up comics, Julia Shiplett, Rachel Pegram, Taylor Ortega. They cast like a really diverse party of people. Like the two brides-to-be who are getting married are a Black woman and a half white, half Asian woman. I'm at the party. There's Rachel Pegram, who plays the Black woman's sister. She's also a Black woman. You could tell that the people who wrote and created the show are white, because there are these little like mistakes. It's a bachelorette party, so we have like boob balloons around, which, first of all, I don't necessarily know that a lesbian bachelorette party would have like boob balloons and like things that like straight people do. I don't find that. I mean, maybe, but like in my experience, not really a thing. It's a Black woman's party. Like, it's weird. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. Mistakes like that. Or like, we're at a strip club. We're at this white strip club. The implication of the whole thing is that like, it's this Black woman's bachelorette party organized by her sister, who's also a Black woman. And I'm like, it just wouldn't happen this way. You know, people make mistakes because like they didn't think about it.
You have this quote in a Paper Mag interview. You said, "I'll never get cast as a lesbian because I look like a dyke. They only want femmes. They want a beautiful woman to kiss another beautiful woman."
And Sydney Washington also added, Sydney, who's an amazing stand-up comic, femme, queer, Black woman, that she also doesn't get those roles because she's like a real lesbian. And that is absolutely, it's interesting. I really consider myself to be just starting out as an actor, really. I mean, I've been auditioning since I graduated from the studio. But of course, an actor 5 years of auditioning is not actually that long.
It's not.
Figuring out how to navigate it as me, as not only an Asian person, but as someone who reads kind of differently gendered depending on what context you put me in. Yeah, there's so little gender diversity in the media as far as like lesbians go, I guess, which like I guess I like read as a lesbian mostly. All of this stuff gets really complicated because
what kind of roles do you go out for? What do they call you in for?
I go out for a lot of stuff. Something that's been really irking me lately, actually, is that I feel like the trend right now is to write for white writers to write characters that have no race or like whatever. I'm saying I think that white writers write straight white characters, and then they hand it over to casting, and then whoever the network is like, oh, but like maybe let's see some diverse faces for this, and then they send the audition out to all these like queer people of color, and we look at that shit and we're like, this is stupid. I would never say this. You know what I mean? And like, to me, it feels very insidious because it feels very like they want us to add like a flavor and color to the show, but it's not about us. It's not about our experiences. So like I auditioned for a lot of parts that were written for women, cis women, but they're like, you know, casting will say, but we're open to a non-binary actor, so don't feel pressure to play it as straight. So I'm like, okay, I can approach this as myself, but I would never have this conversation. You know, I would not be friends with these people. It doesn't make any sense. Like once you put me in there, it doesn't make any sense anymore.
But then you got to go in and do it because that's the audition.
Oh, absolutely. And you've got to dream that you get to play that stupid part.
But that must feel that must suck to go in. I mean, it does suck when you go into an audition and you know this isn't right for me. It's not written for me, but you got to go do it and you got to do good work.
The way that I approach it is that I'm like, if they fall in love with you, then they will change everything to keep you. And that does happen for people. Off the top of my head, I think of Lena Waithe on Aziz Ansari's Master of None. A lot of people who have since fallen from grace. However, I read an article that said that when they were writing the show, they were like, okay, and like the group has like a friend who's a girl, who's a woman. And they wrote it just being like, yeah, she's like a generic like woman. And then Lena Waithe walked into the room and just did it as Lena Waithe. Lena Waithe, of course, being a queer and masculine of center Black woman. And they loved her so much that they were like, scrap that. Like, we'll just have Lena in and we'll have Lena's point of view. And it ended up being really good because Lena ended up really enriching that show, you know, and doing things like helping create the Thanksgiving episode, which was so groundbreaking at the time. And that, of course, would never have happened if they didn't have Lena Waithe in the room. So I'm just waiting for my Lena Waithe thing to pop off, where I get called in for something that's totally wrong for me, and I just do it as myself. And they go, "Well, we love Jess," and that kind of brings it back around to like what I was saying about how I really do think that it's easier to have an acting career as a stand-up comic than as an actor. Acting itself, I feel has and like navigating acting and auditioning as an actor, I feel like has sort of anonymity to it.
Well, but I mean, really, your stand-up comedy is what is opening the doors of your career. It's what's
Hmm.
giving you the platform to be able to walk into a room when you have an audition and do a good piece of acting.
To have it be meaningful for people to be like, let's have Jess Tom on the show instead of seeing me and seeing like a gender nonconforming, non-binary Asian American person and being like, that actually seems hard to work with. Like that actually seems like not what we're looking for, which is how I feel like it would be if I was trying to pursue this just as an actor.
I'm curious. You know, I struggle with my pronouns, but I'm highly sensitive and aware, and it fucking grates on me every single time it doesn't come out right. But how many people do you deal with during the day that just don't give a fuck? Or we walk into a room and it's not even a consideration? I mean, how do people deal with you?
Oh, most of the time it's probably just that they don't know my pronouns or whatever.
Do you correct people in the moment, or do you just like, oh, fuck this, it's not worth it. Call me whatever you want.
It depends. Actually, a younger non-binary comic and actor was asking me about this recently. Like, how do I deal with like being misgendered on set? Which, first of all, I've only been on one TV set, and then like a lot of small sets, but like only one TV set. So I was like, first of all, I don't really know anything. Second of all, a set has so many moving parts and so many people that like nobody is gonna like know stuff. Nobody's gonna know anything about you, you know, let
They don't
alone
care either.
your pronouns. No, it doesn't matter. They're just trying to get you from A to B and like keep everything on schedule. So, and I told this person, I was like, I just have to not care about it. Otherwise, like, I'll go crazy. If I get hurt by it every time, like, that'll really hurt me. So I have to pick and choose my battles. So, like, for things like, for example, when I was in class with you, I didn't tell you until my second year, right? I didn't say, like, these are my
Right.
pronouns. And they always were through first year too, and for years and years before that. Like it wasn't like I discovered something about myself in the middle. It was that I was taking that first year to decide if it was going to be worth it to open that conversation with you and then open the conversation with the rest of the class.
Because you thought that it wouldn't be received the way you want it to be received, or that it would just be shrugged off.
Yeah, and if you were going to push back on it, I wasn't going to be able to learn from you, right? Because how can you really ask me or anybody to like do my most truthful work if I couldn't be true to who I am, right? Or if I didn't feel like I could be safe to be vulnerable around you.
But so all that first year, you didn't think, I need to stop this, or I need to correct him.
Well, that's the thing, Charlie, is that that's the life, right? That's like my whole life. You know, I not right now because we're in quarantine, but I still work a day job, you know, a service day job, um, where people where I was on a staff with 300 people, and I was like, I'm not going to get 300 people to like learn my pronouns. Like that sounds really annoying to me and it sounds not worth it. So that is a compromise that I make in my life at every single level, to just be okay with it sometimes. And to decide when it's really, really important to me to be able to be my most truthful self and have people acknowledge me as my most truthful self.
So the New York Times article,
Yes.
5 non-binary comics on this moment. I'm not some new buzzword. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that was very, very cool. I'm having a cool little moment right now, Charlie, in quarantine, where actually my entertainment career is progressing.
It is.
While having not left my home since the middle of March.
So what's it done for you? I mean, it certainly gives you exposure. New York Times pub is,
It's big, and actually things have been really kicking off for me since then. Actually, can I have a moment to brag?
I would love for you to brag.
Because this just happened this past week. I signed with CAA.
Are you fucking kidding me? Congratulations. That's no joke.
No, I know.
You're going to end up with your own show before you know it.
Something's going to happen. I feel very strongly that something is about to happen for me, and I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I'm excited to find out.
CAA does not sign you if they do not 100% believe that they are going to make a lot of money off of you. Did they reach out to you after the article came out?
Yeah.
That is amazing. Unbelievable.
It's dope. It's very cool. And so they've been sending me on auditions lately.
Plus,
also,
they have their whole production side as well, right? So they'll develop something for you.
With me in particular, as a marginalized actor, that's kind of the way I'm going to have to find myself into the industry, is for people to fall in love with me specifically.
I'm just really excited for you, and I'm proud of you. And, I want to thank you also for challenging me to think and challenging me to be better, just not as a person, but a man and as a teacher. I appreciate that.
I'm glad, not that I had to play any part of it. I am glad that I played a part in, I don't know, making you continue to think about this stuff. Just because I know, it's important. Like, I think teaching is really important. I think being a teacher is a really important job. I think you have a huge amount of influence over a ton of people, right? That's what teaching is. And so I think if you can continue to progress and improve as a teacher, that's the most important thing, because it's not just you. You know what I mean? Like, if it was just you in your own life, I probably wouldn't care.
I have people that come to me, that look to me.
You're helping shape people's careers, and you're helping, like, the dream is that you give the tools to students, including marginalized people such as myself, to be able to go out into the industry and work and succeed. And so to me, it's really important that you do right by us, so that we can benefit, so that we can go out and work, because it's hard, because, and I think that I've talked to you about this before. And I was hearing also in your interview with C, that she had also received training from like school that wasn't good. And I was a theater major at a liberal arts program that was not good. And I don't feel that I benefited from it. And I feel like it was kind of a waste of my money and time to get basically told that like there was no place for me in this work. And I think that you're in a unique position to look at your students, not regardless of who they are, but for who they are and for how different they are, and be like, this is how you can exist in this space. This is how, like, there are possibilities for you.
Well, my fellow daydreamers, thank you for sticking around and keeping your phone in your pocket. I hope you came away from that just a little bit more enlightened. I know that I was. Jess, thank you very much. It meant a hell of a lot to me personally. Please follow this show wherever you get your podcasts. Review it on iTunes. It would be really helpful. Go to my website, creatingbehaviorpodcast.com. I use SpeakPipe. Press the button, leave me a message, ask me a question, give me your thoughts. You can follow me on Instagram at Creating Behavior. You can follow my studio at Maggie Flanagan Studio. Lawrence Trailer, thank you for the music, as always. My friends, please keep challenging yourself, push yourself to grow, to educate yourself, operate outside your comfort zone when you can, and don't ever settle for your second best. My name is Charlie Sandlan. Peace.